Do you wave your terrible towel when Renegade plays? Reach for a tasty cake when JJ shouts, "He scores!" Does the sound of an F1 engine make your heart race? Doing push-ups with the Nittany Lion after a TD? Then lend us an ear, and we will share the exhilaration of Steelers football, the excitement of Flyers hockey, the nail-biting finishes of F1, and the pride when we yell, "We are Penn State." Welcome to the SteelFlyers show, the strangest combination of sports fandom since pineapple was put on pizza. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the SteelFlyers All Sports Network. We've got two of some of the best minds in all of hockey right here for you, folks. That's right, we're going to be breaking down the NHL Central Division trade deadline preview. That's what's going to happen. We got the great Pearlo Wisdom. How you doing, Pearlo?
I'm awesome, man. Awesome. Hockey
Yeah.
afternoon. Loving it.
Awesome. And we also got the GOAT. How about that? The off-the-wall hockey. John, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Ready to talk some hockey. Excited.
Yeah, man. How about that? We got some good stuff to get into, and we're going to break down the Central Division here, and we're going to talk about what we think each of these teams in the Central Division is going to potentially do to the trade deadline. And, man, I'll tell you what, we all have talked about this division offline, off camera, and we all feel that this is one of the tougher divisions we think might to get in and out of, as far as who's going to come out, who's going to be fighting for those bottom two positions there. We got some of the front runners, but man, a lot of teams have been jockeying for position in here, and especially some surprise teams in the Central Division. So, all right, we're going to get into it. We're going to start off by asking each of our panel guests, what they think about what each one of these teams is going to do to up into the trade deadline and or at the trade deadline. And we're going to start by doing the Detroit Red Wings, and we'll start off with the GOAT. John, what do you think about the Detroit Red Wings? How do you think they've come so far this season, and what do you think they're going to potentially be doing here at the trade deadline?
Detroit possibly just selling off some veteran guys, some older guys, be able to get picks or something, back in return. Detroit obviously last place team, in a rebuild right now. Very well known. Going through at this point. They've certainly been a heck of a lot better than they were last year. They picked up some big wins. They've stolen some games. They certainly look like a team that is on the right track and headed in the right direction, but they're certainly not there yet. So I think they're going to use some of these older guys that they have, guys like Darren Helm, Luke Glendening, Bobby Ryan, Sam Gagne, maybe even like Mark Stahl or John Merrill on the back end. Their goaltender potentially, Thomas Greiss or Jonathan Bernier. There's a lot of options here for Stevie Y to sell out some older players and get either prospects or picks back in return. And I think Detroit will be an active seller at the deadline this year.
I think you pointed out a very, very key point there, that Steve Yzerman is the general manager of this team. And we've all seen the fruits of his labor and what he's been able to accomplish over the years. You know what I'm saying? I mean, all you have to do is look down at Tampa Bay and go, hey, what do you know? So break it down for us there, Pearlo. Give us some pearls of wisdom here on Hockeytown, USA. What do you think about the Detroit Red Wings and what they're going to be doing here coming up for the trade deadline?
Yeah, I pretty much have to agree. Especially guys like Bobby Ryan. Like those were a lot of free. They took some free agents. That's pretty much why they took them. Bobby Ryan was a great character guy. He just came over some personal issues and could have fed a lot of these young guys, some information on how not to fall down that route. And that's good to have on your team for a young team like this. It's possible they might want to keep him on for longer than that, but I would think Bobby Ryan would be looking towards trying to get himself a cup now. So I think Bobby Ryan would be pretty open to movement, and I think he could fetch not bad, considering he isn't having that bad of a season this year. So I would say, yeah, guys like that. He mentioned Merrill. John Merrill's not going to bring you much, but even if it's a sixth round pick or Troy Stetcher, somebody like that. If you can get like a fourth or fifth or sixth, it's just an asset that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
And Detroit is certainly still rebuilding here. The only way I could possibly see them as buyers is if there was, a young player that was falling off the vine somewhere that they wanted to get a chance to, um, like sort of like what LA did with Athanasiou or the offseason, something like that.
Mhm.
But besides that, I can't see them certainly being any buying modes. Also with Bernier, any smart teams out there, I would think, would be able to give up quite a bit for him, though, with the way he's been playing the last 2 years. He's been stopping everything.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, he's been playing, I said last year, I thought if he was the best goaltender in the league or darn close to it. If I'm a team out there that is struggling with goaltending in any way, and that's like my only real problem, and there are a few teams out there like that,
Yeah.
I'd be willing to give a first for him right now. Seriously, I really would.
I mean,
But
it's one thing to trade a first for a known commodity.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
if
So-
it's going to put you over the top, I mean, Bernier's playing in a way he's like lights out the last 2 years. He's been playing in a way that could really bring you over the top, I would say.
I like that line of thinking because this is kind of what I was thinking too. Look, if you do that and you do give up a guy and you do give up your first round draft pick if you're trying to make it and you bring that player in
Mm-hmm.
and you make it, you're going to be picking way later in the draft anyway. So you're not
Yeah.
going to get that you're not going to get that good of a player because you're going to be picking much further down in the first round anyway, so that's more like a top second round guy anyway. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's why I like kind of like that idea. So I would be okay with that too. Look,
And it's a weak draft this year, weaker draft, I should
Mhm.
say.
compared to last year's draft.
And compared to next year's draft is insane.
Right. And the other thing I think too is going to be the fact that a lot of the lower leagues didn't play this year, so it's going to be that much harder to evaluate players coming
Yeah.
out of the draft this year too. So that's one of the things I
Yeah.
think it's going to play into some of this. As far as where we're going to see the value of that number one pick this year
Mhm.
only.
Yeah.
Okay, this year only. Where I think you're going to see more value towards the lower end picks than you're going to see that number one pick this year only. But Detroit, I think I agree. They're going in the right direction. They've got a respectable 22 points, so they're not the necessarily the
Yeah.
worst.
They just look a lot more competitive this year. Overall.
Yeah.
I do agree. I think
100%.
Ryan is going to probably be one of those pieces that moves for Detroit. I think he might be one of those guys that's going to go. He could fetch some draft picks for them. That's exactly what they're going to need to get some more players in there. You know what I mean? Plus, they got some pretty nice young talent waiting in the wings. There, get it, wings. They got some nice young talent waiting there in the wings for Red Wings too. So their next couple years are going to be much more improved, though. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, our one of our beloved teams is next. I'm saying that tongue in cheek if you haven't noticed. And we're going to go to the great Pearlo Wisdom, and we're going to
Okay.
talk about one of our favorite teams. That's the Nashville Predators. And
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, see now you understand. Yeah, see, that's why I prefaced. Okay, Nashville has played 29 games. Their record is 12-16-1, and they have 25 points.
Mhm.
They are seventh place in the Discover Central Division. And Perla, what do you think about Nashville? What do you think they're going to do this year at the trade deadline?
Well, they're going to try to sell assets. It's just how many buyers are there going to be out there for the assets that they have. One thing I do have to say about this team is that, oddly enough, the energy and everything seemed to change quite a bit after Duchesne got injured, their number one center. Duchesne has been kind of an enigma his whole career. He's done some very odd things, such as wanting out of Colorado after having one bad year, which doesn't shine a very good light on somebody who's was supposed to be a future leader for that team.
Yeah.
Went to Ottawa, ended up going to Ottawa, which didn't work out either. And then went to Columbus, had not bad, and then finally took the big money and went to Nashville. Now, I listened to a lot of stuff on the various places that talk about certain teams, especially players that used to play in the game, and a couple guys that played with Duchesne. And from several areas, they talked about Duchesne kind of being whiny. Okay. And that's not something that they talk about. Good guy, but he gets down on himself and the team very quickly. And that's an energy that just can, permeate through an organization, through a team, and just cause serious problems. David Poile built a team. A lot of the people they brought in had this sort of issues behind them. Turris was one that ended up having to ship out after giving him $6 million a year for 6 years. And now he's in Edmonton. He's not doing well over there. But character issues. Mm-hmm. If anything, this team, I would say, would really want to look at character players to build around here if they can find a way to do that. Even Johansson, who they picked up from Columbus, for Seth Jones, Tortorella, when he had him, kind of talked about him not being that, having the not the character that you want from a number one center. Okay, so you got a whole lot of guys here and character seems to be the issue. So what do I think they're going to do? I can't see how Poile keeps his job after this season. I really can't. The general manager. I think first, before you do anything, you probably got to move on from your general manager and get a new way of thinking in there to bring in. I wouldn't, as an owner, be comfortable with having Poile continue to make moves and decisions here. I don't know what they're planning on doing, but if I'm doing this, I'm going to be looking at finding somebody for Ryan Johansson at $8 million a year. I don't know how they're going to do that. Duchesne pretty much has a reputation, and he's making $8 million a year. So I don't know how you're going to do that. Besides that, you'll trade Granlund on a one. He's a UFA after this. Eric Halla, you get a couple picks for them, and take your picks as many as you can. Go into next year and look for character guys to surround these guys. They need guys that are able to be, accountability is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
They need players that can hold players accountable here and are not going to keep their mouth shut about it. Like they're vocal about it. That's what I think they need here. A guy like Voracek in Philadelphia has been known to do that sort of thing. There's been a couple, right? That's true, right? We'll mention another one later, but the Folignos are, there's a lot of guys out there that vocally hold people to a standard.
Yeah.
And I think they don't have anybody in here like that I see. That's, to me, their biggest problem. So trade those guys away, find yourself a general manager that can identify that type of talent, try it again next year. Because Nashville can't really afford to go on a complete rebuild right now, I don't think. Maybe you can keep Duchesne, you can keep Johansson, and put guys around them that are going to keep them in check. That's where I think they would have to go. Besides that, a goaltender. Absolutely no doubt about it. If they can find a goaltender at the trade deadline or any time, Pekka Rinne and Juuse Saros are not the answer. Simple as that. Simple as that. That's what I would say they're looking. So they're kind of buyers, kind of sellers, depending on if they can get the right pieces.
I mean, they only have, I think, they'll have projected 2.4. They currently have 5.3, but they're projected to have 2.4 million in cap space.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because if you get rid of the GM, he's the guy that's making the moves, and if you don't want him making moves, then, well, what are you going to do?
Well, it's probably why it's not going to happen until the end of the year. So if I'm the owner, I'd be telling the manager, just, trade. Any manager can find as high a draft picks as they can get for guys like Granlund and Hall.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. So just trade.
And then in the off season, you let him go. A good example would be what Zito did in Florida, getting Hornqvist from Pittsburgh. That's a guy that holds their team accountable and is the type of character I'm talking about. Guys like that.
I got you. I'm with you. Mr. Goat, off the wall. Give us your breakdown here of the Nashville Predators. What do you think about them for the trade deadline?
I think they'll be one of the biggest sellers at the deadline that there is. This team's not making the playoffs this year. They've got plenty of guys that they can ship out. There's already, look at the names that people are talking about. A lot of them are Nashville Predators. Matthias Ekholm, Mikael Granlund, Eric Howla, Philip Forsberg. Nobody on this team is untouchable except for probably Roman Josi. He's the only guy that I think Nashville would not entertain talks about. Everyone else is on the block here. Now, are they able to move contracts like Johansson and Duchesne? Probably not. But will Granlund be gone? Probably. Yeah. Will Howla be gone? I would say almost certainly. Ekholm's already out. Like, Ekholm's already been traded to like 6 different teams already. And this team's going to be making moves. This team's going to be selling. They've got pieces that they can get decent return for. Forsberg's name's come up a lot. His plays dropped off a little bit recently and over the past couple of years, really. He's got another year on his contract, so he has term. He's not just a rental. They're going to be able to get a good haul back in return for someone like that. So I would expect the Nashville Predators to be very, very active in selling at this deadline. And they've got pieces that they can do it with. And speaking on Pearlo's character thing about the Preds, they have not been the same since Mike Fisher retired.
Yes.
They have not had the same level of character and leadership since Mike Fisher retired. That's been a huge issue for them and something that they have not been able to replace. And it sure as heck isn't going to come from Matt Duchesne, who's been a locker room problem in a lot of the places that he's gone. So I think they need to kind of just start sending pieces out here, and then in the offseason reevaluate and see what they're going to do. I also don't see how David Poile can keep his job. He's had more than enough time with this Predators team. For the most part, he's had a successful run with this Predators team, but the past 2 years, they've taken a pretty significant decline, and I would not be surprised if there's a new GM there next season.
Man, great point, because they brought Fisher back out of retirement
for half the year, that one last season. Yep.
Okay.
Back in 2018.
That's what I mean. So, yeah. And I also agree, too. I don't think Laviolette was the issue there in Nashville either.
No.
Okay. And so getting rid of him was a big stake in the heart. And then, not being able to, Fisher retiring and all that stuff, too. So, look, I also agree. I've heard names like Forsberg and, Duchesne and some of the other names, Ekholm on Nashville, even Pekka Rinne potentially could be going somewhere. I mean, who knows? You know what I'm saying? So I'm with you on this. I agree. These guys are going to probably be selling off as much as they can to try. It's kind of like a Detroit thing, where they might be selling off as much as they can to try to get as many picks as they can or as much assets as they can get coming back. Just like John said and just like Pearlo said, I do agree. I think they're going to be sellers, and I think we might see one of those Nashville dominoes fall sooner rather than later. I don't know. I just have that feeling.
Would not be surprised.
Right, because there's teams that are going to be desperate, and we're about 2 weeks, 3 weeks away from the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see teams starting to get desperate. All right, boys. Well, we covered the bottom two. Now let's start working into the meat of it here now. And one of the teams that we're going to talk about next was in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and we're talking about the Dallas Stars. They've played 25 games. Now, they haven't played nearly as many games as the rest of the division because they had that really bad COVID outbreak at the beginning of the year where they missed quite a few games and quite a few players were on the list and things like that. And they're just now starting to kind of get healthy and get back into the swing and, whatever. But they've still been dealing with some injuries as well. Dallas is 25 games. They are 9-9-7. They've got 25 points. So that's a two-way tie here with Nashville in points. So let's go with John. John, what do you think about the Dallas Stars? We had this team on our power rankings for the first couple of weeks until they even started playing games. And then they came out and they won their first couple of games, and we're like, yeah, Dallas, okay, yeah. And then it just kind of dropped off a cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Okay. So, what is your assessment here on the Dallas Stars for the trade deadline, John?
They've been pretty disappointing so far this season. I don't think, a team that was in the finals last year you thought would be pretty well locked in to be in the playoffs at least again this season, and that's not been the case at all. Standings are deceiving, though, with this team a little bit because they played so many less games than the other teams around them. So are they really, a sixth-place team? I think there's a good chance, with those games in hand that they could pass Columbus, and maybe even a chance that they could take Chicago's fourth playoff spot. So this team's certainly not out of it. It's going to be interesting because they don't have a whole lot of room to work with as far as salary cap is concerned. So they're probably going to have to do something from, they're going to have to find it within them to if they're going to make a late season run here. Because I don't think they're going to be overly active in either direction at the trade market. I don't think they're too close to a playoff spot to be complete sellers and start selling guys off like Cogliano or Como or, guys on the back end. Like maybe a Jamie Oleksiak. I don't think they're going to sell off like that because they're still within reach of making the playoffs. But at the same time, they don't really have the cap space to be buyers. And Tyler Seguin presumably will be coming back at some point late in this season. So people, they've been without their number one center for this entire year. He has not played a game this season after off-season surgery. That's right. So when Seguin comes back, that's going to be a boost. That's going to be a boost from within for the Stars. And I honestly think that they'll probably be one of the more quiet teams at the deadline this year and just try and figure out which direction they're going to go in with their own players that they already have.
Gotcha. Makes sense. All right, Pearlo, what do you think? What do you think about them Dallas Stars? They were in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and they have Tampa Bay, Florida, and Carolina each have 3 games in hand. Chicago has 5, Columbus has 5, Nashville has 4, and Detroit has 5 games in hand for each of the respective teams here from Dallas. So Dallas has a lot of games in hand from the rest of the division because of what they missed. So Pearlo, what do you think about the Stars?
Well, I mean, they've been through some difficulties with COVID, and it's been a very off and on year where you just can't seem to get a roll going. Things haven't really been going their way just in fortunes. So I don't think they put too much stock on the fact that they're a 500 team right now. Also, like John was saying, take into consideration, take anybody's number one center off their team and see how they do. Mm-hmm. And then also they just got Alexander Radulov back. Yeah. So that's their number one center and their number one right winger.
Yeah.
So take those off of any team and, they're probably going to struggle. Not to mention Ropo Hintz has also been injured as well. They've had very significant injuries on this team. However, they've done a really good job drafting. Jason Dickinson and Jason Robertson are both coming around right now and playing very well. They have a young Ty Dellandrea who's looked pretty good when he's been in the lineup. He maybe not be really ready for full-time duty, but he does look like he's not too far away. So I don't think, I like John, I think they're going to roll with what they have and allow Seguin to come in, give it their best shot. If things don't work out, say, you know what, not every year works out the way you want, and move on to next year. The one move I could see them see happening, though, is if Bishop, and also let's remember that Bishop still is considered their number one goaltender, right? And so you haven't had your number one right winger, your number one center, and your number one goaltender all year. Take that off of any team and see if you're still 500. So actually, they're doing pretty well, right? They could go on a really big run here in the second half once they start getting everybody back. But the one thing that could happen And this is a team that still needs to look at their future a little bit because a lot of their guys are getting older. Radulov, who I just mentioned, is 34. Pavelski's 36. He's only got maybe another year or two. Ben is 31. They're not getting younger for sure.
Yep.
And so they will have to pay attention a little bit to draft picks to keep rolling. And Anton Khudobin really, really, really upset the coach this year. He was like spitting mad at whatever happened. Why do I always forget his name? Help me out there, John.
Rick Bowness.
Rick Bowness,
yeah. For the coach of Dallas, yeah.
Yeah, coach of Dallas. Anton Khudobin really, and he hasn't been, he's been off and on ever since whatever happened there. Hasn't been great.
Jake
Ottinger is basically taken over, right, John?
Yep. Yeah, he's starting again tonight. I think it's his fourth straight start for Ottinger.
Yeah. So I don't know what Khudobin did, but he's in the doghouse big time. One of the things he did is when he's good, he's good. When he's bad, he's horrible this year.
Yeah.
So if you don't have consistency and then whatever you did to get benched for a while and have the coach come out and say just be mad like that, I could see him on the block. If Bishop's able to come back. I could see them going for a draft pick for Khudobin, which they could probably get a second. Somebody out there, again, goaltending I think is going to be at a premium for a lot of teams out there this year with how tired a lot of their goaltenders are going to be from playing all the games and stuff like that. So that's one place I could see them picking up a draft pick.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because that's exactly where I was going to go. I was going to say, look, they have Bishop sitting back there who could probably either him or Khudobin is not going to be on the team next year, and they just got to figure out which one. Okay, and if they can move one, then okay, and then you know what I mean. It seems like they might be more inclined to move Khudobin now if he's in the doghouse. You know what I mean? Because he did sign a real team-friendly, $3 million deal last year to stay in Dallas. You know what I mean? And so we'll see. I do agree. I think they're just about at that cusp, and I think that if they have enough guys come back from injury and things like that, you might see them make some minor moves. But I agree with John. I don't think there's going to be a lot of movement here in Dallas, just because I think they still might be able to put it together. You know what I mean? There might be some things that might go on, but it's hard to gauge this team because of the injuries and because of the number of games that they miss. It's kind of hard to judge this team. So if they can get rid of a goalie that is maybe bad in the room or whatever the case is, if Khudobin's going to be that guy, they'll be able to get something for him. But I think they'll be able to get something for Bishop too. Either one, it's not going to matter. They're going to be able to get something for either one. One of them's going to have to stay. The other one's going to have to go. They just have to figure out which one. Is it going to happen during the trade deadline? It very well could. But with Bishop still being out, you're not going to see him move until at least after he's healthy again or whatever the case is for that. So, I do think that it's kind of weird because you got this kind of logjam here in the Central, where Dallas and Columbus and Chicago are all kind of, and Nashville, they're all kind of. It's a mess. That's a good way to put it. It's a good mess, though. Okay.
It's close, sure.
So, moving on to the fifth-ranked team in the division, we're talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets. They have played 30 games. They are 11, 12, and 7. They have 29 points. They are slightly below 500, but because of the number of points they have, they are in fifth place in the division. So, all right, Pearlo. Give me a breakdown here on the Columbus Blue Jackets. What do you think's going on there with the Blue Jackets for the trade deadline this year?
This team's all over the place. I seriously, I have no idea. This almost seems like a wasted year for the Columbus Blue Jackets with all the stuff that went on with Dubois and having to move him out. And then you're bringing in guys like Lion-A, polarizing guys too, like Lion-A, who don't know. Columbus is total system. their whole, up until now, everything has been based on their system. And it's not a system that is like you come in and just acclimate to right away. It's a system that takes time to learn how to do. It's not a normal hockey system that Tortorella implores, and everybody has a place, and they have to find that place, and it can change over time depending on what everybody's strengths and weaknesses are. So this is a year where they're just trying to find out what they are all over again, it seems to me. When you lose somebody like Dubois, who's your number one center in a system like this, it's pretty difficult. Not only that, the bringing in of Max Domi. They lost some defensemen last year. It's like there's been a huge change with this team. And I don't know what they are. I don't think they know what they are. So what are they going to trade at this point? I would definitely think that whatever they decide to trade out at this point, you can basically say that these are players that they don't think they're going to work with whatever they're doing. And I don't know what those players would be right now. The only person I can see here, maybe like Riley Nash for a draft pick. If they don't think they can sign Patrick Laine, trade him again. That's possible. It's really all up in the air. Max Domi doesn't look like he's been a fit so far, but what kind of value are you going to get for him now? He's got 2 years at 5.3, so you're probably going to have to hold on to him for one more year and see if he works out. Nick Foligno, are they going to re-sign him again? I sure hope so, because if we're not signing Nick Foligno, which is the heart and soul of this team, you might as well just trade everybody off and start all new all over again. You've got Elvis Merzlikins and Joonas Korpisalo. Neither one of them have really shown too much, Korpisalo especially. Right. They could lose one of them. They've been so poor, you might not even lose them to Seattle. So I'm not sure if you have to trade one of those guys away. This is just as far as even picking Columbus if they're going to win or not every night. Columbus is winning with high-scoring games when they win, and they're losing in low-scoring games. It's like they're totally a voodoo team. So honestly, David Savard they have to re-sign. If they're not going to sign David Savard, then what do you have left for defense now? Gabriel Carlson is going to be Michael Del Zotto. Scott Harrington doesn't look like he can take that role. I hate to say I don't know, but I don't know. I really don't know I don't know where they're going here. I don't know where Columbus is going at this moment. They're in a total transition would be the word for me, and I think they're just going to hold everything together and reassess in the off season. I wouldn't doubt that you don't see too much movement out of Columbus, and I think that will surprise some people.
Okay. John, what do you think about the Blue Jackets this year? Do you think there's going to be some movement? Do you think they're going to... what do you think? I mean, you're chortling over there, so give me...
I'm not afraid to say it. I don't know. This team could go. There are 3 distinct directions this team could go in, and I have absolutely no idea which one it's going to be. They could do absolutely nothing and just try and hold on to this team and reassess in the offseason and try and figure it out then. They could turn into complete sellers. They have guys that they could sell off, like David Savard, like Nick Foligno, like one of their goaltenders, maybe even Max Domi. They have guys that they could sell off if they don't think that they're going to make it and they think they can get some value back for those guys. Yeah. Or they could try and buy because they're still only 4 points out of a playoff spot. Even though they are under 500 right now, they're still sitting just 4 points back of Chicago with the same number of games played as the Blackhawks and could make a run for that final playoff spot in the Central in the second half of the season. So they could maybe try and add to the or do something to to try and get this lineup, into the playoffs and see if they can maybe steal a run here in the second part of the season. I have no idea what this team is going to do. There's three very different directions that they could go in, and with where they're at right now, they could go in any of those directions.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, man. It's going to be so hard to judge what's going to happen with this team. And you know what? To be honest with you, here's what I think is going to happen. I think that they're not going to make the playoffs, and I think the coach is going to be gone. And I think that they're probably going to have to be at some type of situation where they're going to have to try to either keep the core that they have to move on, or they're going to have to try to get rid of some people to you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They are such an up and down team. They've got $2 million cap space right now. They got $9 million on the long term cap space. So they do have some wiggle room as far as money is concerned. If you're not going to sign Line A, then he's going to either be a free agent or available for the expansion draft. That's the other thing that they're going to have to be worried about too, is if they're not going to sell these guys off, then they're going to have to re-sign them, and then they're going to have to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So if you have to re-sign Line A, he's going to be one of those guys that you're going to want to re-sign and protect, or you're going to have to trade him off. You see what I mean? Because that's kind of where I think they're at. And that's why this is going to be the hardest team to judge on what they're going to do this year, because they are so close to a playoff spot. And if they get on a tear and start winning some games in a row, I mean, we've seen every game is a 4-point swing. You win 3-4 games in a row and the teams ahead of you lose 2 games, bang, you're right back in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's not going to take much, but I'm kind of with you guys. I do agree this is going to be the hardest team, I think. But if they're not going to make the playoffs, then I think you're going to see some things happen. If they are going to make the playoffs, then I don't think you're going to see too much except for maybe some re-signings.
Yep.
That's about it.
I think the likelihood of what's going to happen here is that I think this team might end up gelling over time and almost be on the cusp of being a playoff team or not come the trade deadline. This game tonight is going to be big because they've got 3 days to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Great coaches like Tortorella, Barry Trotz don't need much to get everybody going on the same page and show them a few things to get going. So we'll see coming up here in the next little bit for that. But if they're going to be, the one thing that Kekalainen has said is he's looking for a center. He's flat out came out and said he's looking for a center right now. Where is he going to find it? I don't know how much there's out there. Like Calgary goes out into the playoffs, maybe Monahan is available.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. But I mean, that could happen at really any time.
Right.
That they would do that. So whether it would happen at the deadline or not, but I think they're going to probably turn it around and hold on to a certain state or a certain amount. They're going to hold on, which makes it even more difficult to figure out what they're going to do.
Yep.
Which, I mean, we've talked about it on numerous occasions. We've, exactly with what's going to happen with this team. It's going to be hard to say, and we're just going to have to deal with it as it comes, and that's just how it's going to have to be. I don't know either. So, all right, the next team on the list is 4th place, and this is we were not necessarily expecting Chicago to be in this spot. But we're talking about the Chicago Blackhawks here in 4th place of the division. With 30 games played, they are 14-11-5 with 33 points. They've been playing unexpectedly well. They've beaten teams that we didn't think they were going to beat, and they're in a position right now to potentially make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you steer that wrong? You know what I'm saying? Let's go with... Let's go with John on this one. What do you think about the Chicago Blackhawks and what they might potentially do at this time for the trade deadline this year?
Yeah, so I feel like this is probably a good spot to have a quiet deadline if you're the Chicago Blackhawks, because this was a team that was supposed to be rebuilding, not supposed to be in the playoffs. They were not expecting to be in this position. At the beginning of the year, we would have thought they would have been huge sellers. They're not just going to sell off here at the deadline, obviously, because they're trying to make the playoffs and hold on to this fourth spot. So I don't think you're going to see them really sell off. And looking at it, they have a couple of guys, maybe if they wanted to do deals for Matthias Janmark and Carl Soderberg are both UFAs at the end of the year. Maybe if they can get a player back for them, they could do something there. But I wouldn't expect big moves from Chicago because, they're not going to completely sell because they do want to make the playoffs and hold on to this spot. But at the same time, they're not truly Stanley Cup contenders, where they're going to go in and just, start giving up draft picks and young players to try and, buy at the deadline. That wouldn't make any sense for a team that literally admitted themselves that they were in a rebuild mode before the season started. So I have a feeling that this is probably going to be a quiet deadline for Chicago. They're going to see what they can pull off with this team and see if they can continue winning with this group, because it has been a surprisingly good season for Chicago. Yeah. But this isn't. I don't think you're going to see major moves in either direction with this team.
You know what, John? I'm going to have to tell you something, man. I've been really impressed with what Chicago's done this year. And if this is what they call rebuilding, jeez. Pearlo, give me some wisdom here on the Chicago Blackhawks. What do you think about this team for the trade deadline this year?
Well, first of all, they were rebuilding like 3 years ago. They just didn't tell anybody. When Taves came out and said, I didn't know you were rebuilding, I was like, well, you should have fired your agent, because it was pretty clear they were rebuilding. But they did it in a very smart way to make it seem like to their veterans that we're still trying to win a cup, so their young players can learn what it looks like to try to win a cup, but knowing that they have no chance, which all of us knew every year. Every time we looked at the Chicago roster, like that, this isn't a cup-winning team, there's no doubt about it, blah, 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 blah. So they were sort of rebuilding already. They just weren't, they were being all sneaky about it. And so what are they going to do now? Well, it depends on a lot on how many guys come back here. Like Andrew Shaw has a concussion. Who knows? I mean, he's 29 years old. He should be able to come back eventually, we hope. Ryan Strome, again, has a concussion. A lot of these, they could be taking them really cautious because they're doing well. No use coming back. We'll wait until closer to the playoff time or trade deadline time. Taves, as far as we know, it's a fatigue issue. I don't know what the problem is there. He could be back at any time. Kirby Dach will be back. So once these guys start flowing in, what I think Chicago could do here is a combination. They could have these guys come in, and then they have a guy like Carl Soderberg, who do they really need anymore? Mm-hmm. Somebody would probably give him a third-round pick. They can grab more picks and still be a cup contender at the same time. Mm-hmm. Shaw comes in, and you got Matthias Janmark taking his spot right now. So either you go, okay, Shaw, we'll trade Shaw. We'll get a pick for him after a concussion, or Matthias Janmark, he's a UFA. They can try to pull another third or fourth out of him and then put Shaw in that spot and still see what they can do in the playoffs. This team isn't likely. Who knows? You never know once you get into the playoffs. You know the old adage, right? Once you're in there, you never know what might happen.
That's right. Everybody's 0-0.
So as these Alexander Nylander, all of these guys come in, it opens up spots or players that they can choose to say, 25 years old, somebody may give you a third or fourth round out there. I don't know. Let him go. Let whoever comes back from injury come in, and you can do both. You're still on a rebuild. You're picking third, fourth round picks up to turn into younger players, and you're still trying to win a cup. These are brilliant minds, the Bowmans. I remember when we were talking about this before. They're absolute genius minds. When we were talking about it before the season, I said, I don't think these guys have a chance. They have a goaltender, blah, blah, blah. But they're the Bowmans.
Boy, were we wrong.
So But I said they're the Bowmans. Don't be surprised if these guys come up with something. They're brilliant. Scotty Bowman's probably the most brilliant mind that ever was in the game. At least right up there, anyway.
I can't argue on that. I think Chicago's going to be one of those teams where if they continue to do what they're doing, I think they're just going to do the things that they need to do to add the players that they need to add, like they've been doing for the last 2-3 years, and they're just going to keep on keeping on. Okay? I think they're going to have a couple of guys that might come and go, but for the most part, most of all the major pieces are going to stay, and they're going to keep going at it. Okay? It makes the most sense. It doesn't make any sense to trade away anybody because, let's face it, you guys are trying to make a run right now. You're in contention. You have potential. You know what I mean? So I look to them to maybe do a couple of minor league deals. You know, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for them to look at a goaltender. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad thing if, like, let's just play McWorld for a second, but what if they got Hudobin? Yeah. Or what if they could get somebody like Grice? Or, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
If they could
a veteran to work with Langton,
that would be good.
Right. I think that would put them over the edge. You know what I mean? I just kind of have that feeling because
let's just say what Kevin Langton is doing this year is insane too. He has no veteran to help him out. He's come in with a guy like Malcolm Subban. You really can't tell him much. What's Malcolm Subban going to tell him? He's a million times better than Malcolm.
Yep.
Which is why I went with goalie, because if they brought in a Grice or a Hudobin or somebody that they could get off the market from, you know, some of the other teams here, that might help them. You know what I mean? So, all right. Moving on to the third place team, and this is a team that we all thought could potentially have potential to be there, and boy, aren't they just living up to that potential. We're talking about the Carolina Hurricanes, and they have played 28 games. They have won 20, lost 7, and overtime tie here, or whatever is 1. So they're 27-1. They got 41 points. For the Carolina Hurricanes, 41 points is like good for, you know, tied for third best in the league as far as points are concerned. So let's start off with Pearlo and go, Pearlo, what do you think about them Hurricanes, buddy?
Oh, this team is stacked. Like, I don't know if there's really much they have to do.
Right, cool.
But I mean, we're always going to be talking about the goaltending there. But Nedeljkovic has played very well. Mm-hmm. But I still would like to see this. If we talked about Bernier earlier, this is a team that I think is going to go. If they're not one to give up first round picks, but this could be the year. Maybe even 2 seconds or whatever. I don't know. But put a package together. They've got a couple guys in there that are probably their biggest problem is going to be who they're going to lose at the expansion draft.
Yeah.
And so they have a couple guys here on this team that they could afford to lose, and it's not that big of a deal because they're probably going to lose them in expansion anyways. Like Hayden Fleury, for instance. Mm-hmm. Hayden Fleury is a good young defenseman, but he's kind of left stagnant there. With Pesce, Shea, Slavin, Hamilton, all of that, or even maybe a Shea, something like that. Head over to Detroit. Who needs defensemen to get a Bernier? Bernier is excellent because they don't have to give up a ton. He's older, so they're not going to have to throw tons of money at him to keep him happy. And I think he'd be very happy to have a chance to win a cup and be a real number one in his career with a team as strong as this. So that would be the only thing I would really do for them, because their chemistry on this team is one of the strongest in the league. I wouldn't want to mess with that. I wouldn't want to bring in another major piece right now when you've worked so hard to get where you are as a team like this. That's one of the things at the deadline the teams have to weigh out a lot, is how much is a big player going to affect the chemistry of this team. Mm-hmm. This team has really gelled together as a team for quite some time.
Sure they have.
And to just bring in a guy and say, okay, you're going to take this spot from a guy that's worked with the team as long as it just doesn't seem like something that Carolina should be doing and will do. And Rod Brindamore, who knows, we know, if anybody knows anything about team chemistry, it's Rod Brindamore. He's just a beast in the character mode as a player, and he's bringing it as a coach to Carolina as well. I don't see those much moves. Maybe that one move. I would really like to see. Bernier just seems to be a great fit here. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but that would be a guy that I'd be looking at. And it's just he just seems like a Carolina type guy, an underdog. Never doesn't get enough credit. Never has his whole career. Carolina likes to grab those guys, you know, and I could see it. I could see it.
Okay. All right, John, what do you think, man? Put that laser focus on the Carolina Hurricanes, and what do you got for this team coming out for the trade deadline this year?
I don't think they're going to do much, if anything. They're not going to. They've been one of the best teams in the league this year. They're absolutely stacked in, up front and on defense. They've already made their depth move. They went and they got Cedric Paquette from the Ottawa Senators, who was on the Stanley Cup winning Tampa Bay Lightning last year. That was kind of that fourth line guy with some attitude and edge that they needed to bring in. They already made that move. So I don't think they're going to touch this defense. They have probably one of, if not the best defense cores in the entire league. They're not going to touch that. I don't think they're going to really change much of anything. They're young. They're talented. They work hard. They have incredibly good team chemistry. They play really well together. They love playing for their coach. Pearlo brings up the goaltending, and it's definitely been something talked about a lot with Carolina, has been the goaltending, but Nedeljkovic has been so good this year in the games that he's played that I almost think they're going to shy away from even changing that. I think they might just roll with what they've got, and Carolina is not a team that usually goes out and makes a lot of those kind of, especially deadline type moves. Like, they're not going to go reaching for anything. If they think that they can win with the group that they have, they'll just stay there and keep this group. And I honestly would not be surprised if they don't do anything and they just keep this team and keep rolling with it.
Makes sense to me. I mean, they're plus 25 at the goal differential,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're one of the better goals against teams at 76.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not like their goaltending isn't working, because it is.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions about if they can go deep in the playoffs with that goaltending, but I think from Carolina's thinking is going to be that Nedeljkovic has proven he's an NHL goalie. We have Mrazek and Reimer. Only one of those guys is going to have to play in the playoffs, and they might just stick with it and see what happens.
That's exactly what I think they're going to do. But I think Pearlo brought up a really good point about a guy that might potentially, if they can get something for them now, if they're not going to be able to protect them or whatever in the expansion draft, now would be that time to try to get something for that player now. Because I also agree with what Pearlo said. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you throw anybody into this lineup, I think it's gonna alter the chemistry, and it's gonna change things a little bit, and it's gonna take some time to get things remolded back to where it was. And I'm with you guys on this. I don't think that Carolina is going to do much of anything. They don't need to. The only thing I think they might do would be to try to get an asset for somebody that is going to potentially go in the expansion draft from them.
Mm-hmm.
So they might try to move one of those players to try to get an asset in return instead of just losing them. I mean, if I was a GM, that's what I would be trying to do, but I'm not their GM, so.
Yeah, the thing is you don't want to lose. I mean, rather lose a guy
you can't
than
take a really good
than take a guy out that's going to actually affect your team, which makes it very difficult for them to do anything. Jake Bean is one of those guys. It's going to be expansion is going to be very interesting with them. There's going to be a lot of good players that are going to be left available.
Yeah.
That I think Brady Shea will be the guy that's the odd man out.
I do too, because his contract's bad. So they leave him unprotected and just say, Seattle, you want this contract? Have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now that leaves us with the top two teams. The first of the top two teams is the Florida Panthers. And they have played 28 games. They have 19 wins, 5 losses, and 4 overtime. They have 42 points. Okay? They are tied for the league lead in points. Okay. Uh, we never expected Florida to even be sniffing this close to the top. Uh,
No.
we thought that even if Bob played close to his Vezina Trophy self, that they would remotely even have a chance. And to be honest with you, he hasn't played up to his Vezina Trophy self. He's been playing better as of late, but his backup has played, and Florida is just playing well. Winning the games they're supposed to be winning, not losing the games they're not supposed to be losing. Exceptions here and there, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, John, what do you think about the Florida Panthers and what they're going to do here for the trade deadline?
Well, this is an interesting spot for Bill Zito to be in as a GM here. First year GM, your team's completely overachieving, much better than most people thought that they were going to be. I think this is a fine line to walk between trying to add at the deadline and not trying to screw up what you already have going on. Because, I mean, this team's fighting for first place in the entire league. Do you really want to change that lineup too much? Or I would almost think that you just let these guys roll with it and see what they can do. I mean, there's not a whole lot of holes there. You could maybe try and add, a depth piece here or there. But even that, I mean, they're getting good play out of their depth players for the most part. And you don't want to mess up the team chemistry because this team was not supposed to be here. They have the veteran in Patrick Hornquist and Radko Gudas that they added in to kind of bring some experience to that blue line in a lot of playoff games. Hornquist is a cup winner multiple times. When he was with Pittsburgh, and I'm like, there's not much this team's missing. Drieger is playing great in goal. Bobrovsky's numbers still aren't great personally, but his win total is. He's winning a lot of games. So they have the goaltending, presumably. They're not going to really change that up. And, I don't think, maybe you try and add a depth piece, but there's not a whole lot that needs to be done with this team. You do not want to screw up the team chemistry because they have been just incredibly good this season compared to where they were supposed to be. So if I'm kind of taking a hands-off approach here, if I'm the Panthers and I'm just taking this team into the playoffs and seeing what they can do.
Yeah, man. All right, Pearlo, drop some wisdom on me here, man. These Florida Panthers, here we go.
I think you could be surprised what they may do. Zito seems to think things outside of the box. When he picked up Patrick Hornquist, now he picked him up for a defenseman, Matheson, that did horrible for them last year. So in that way, people thought, you got Patrick Hornquist. But nobody thought they're good now. They got Patrick Hornquist.
Yeah.
So, and then he comes in and he's lighting it up. Like, he's playing extremely well. The character he's shown me more. Like, I never realized how much he meant to that Pittsburgh team, honestly.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot, but I never saw the full value of Patrick Hornquist until he got here in Florida. So, what are they going to do? I agree, John. With John, they could just keep the chemistry and keep rolling. Or, Zito could see a guy out there that can effortlessly come into this lineup and add more scoring, which they could use. A guy off the top of my head has been rumored to possibly be available if they can't sign him is Palmieri in New Jersey. He could fit really well on that left side with Barkov and Verhaeghe. That would look good pretty on paper anyways. I don't know exactly how much it would cost to get him and all of those sort of things like that. But I think he's going to be out there looking a little bit for sure, but it's not going to be like he's on the edge of his seat trying to find somebody else.
Trying to make that deal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cap space. They have cap space.
They do have some cap space.
They have some cap space. They have some room. I do agree though. I don't think they're going to do anything. Except unless they can find that depth guy they can bring in that's not going to, interrupt the flow here. But I don't think they're going to do much of anything. I think they did what they were going to do during the offseason this past year. You know what I mean? And they weren't. I don't even think they thought they were going to be this good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think they're just as surprised as the rest of us. And so they're like, okay, just run with it, guys. Well, let's go. Put the same guys out. This would be a great way for Florida to get great assessment on their players currently. If they don't trade anybody and they just let them go and they just see where they come to, then you're going to see, okay, this is what Florida really is. This is what Quenneville's really doing. This is what, the general manager's really, this is what they're really doing down there in Florida. So bringing Quenneville in, I think, was one of the key things to help Florida get into relevancy. And I think we're starting to see that now because his system and because these players are buying into this system. Okay, Yandel's been playing really well. Everybody down there has been playing really well. They've gelled really well. They've come together. You know what I mean? They put a good product out there on the ice, and they're winning games against the teams like Tampa Bay, against teams like Chicago, and teams that are in the top of the division for them. You know what I mean? My concern for them is going to be once we get into the playoffs and they start facing teams outside of their division. That's where my problems are going to come in. And what are they going to have for that? Okay, are they going to need to bring in that one more defensive guy or that one more forward guy that's going to be able to help them get that little bit of push? You know what I mean? So that's what I'm kind of thinking about that. All right, guys, that's the Florida Panthers. Now we got to talk about the Stanley Cup division, or the Stanley Cup winning team from last year. Is the defending champs, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who had dropped a little bit there and then kind of came back, and now they're leading the division. They've played 28 games. They are 26-2, and they are also tied with the most points in the league of 42. They don't need anything. They're getting their free agent guy back, their number one center back that they had all of last year without Stamkos. He's coming back. Okay, I'm done. All right, Pearlo, give me some wisdom on the Tampa Bay Lightning, the defending champs. What do you think?
I have to agree that they don't need anything, and they also have the best winger in the game coming back. So that's kind of your addition right there.
That's what they did at the trade deadline. Their number one winger comes back. All right.
Pretty much. However, since he is coming back, though, there is still a big picture issue with Tampa Bay as far as cap space is concerned. And they have so much depth. They could actually start taking care of that at the trade deadline a little bit if they wanted to. There could be a winger that, like, say, Alex Killorn or something like that, because they've got Matthew Joseph has really had a great year so far this year. From the bottom 3-4 spot, putting up good points. He's really pushing them to give him more minutes. And if you've got Kucherov coming back, there's not going to be more minutes there. He doesn't make much money, is what I'm trying to say. So if Kucherov comes back, you've got Matthew Joseph that's pushing up the lineup. At the trade deadline, you could take a guy like Alex Killorn, who's making a significant amount of money, and you can trade him for a draft pick or something like that, or maybe some depth on D and a draft pick or something like that. So you're working on a little bit outside the box, where you're working on your future as well as your now. And I think that's possible. Something like that could happen. However, it is always nice to have those guys in the playoffs in case you have injuries as well. It's going to depend on how much of a luxury they find that out to be. But for the most part, I don't think they're going to add too much. The only thing that I could see them possibly adding, and they would have to do so by trading a guy like Alex Killorn, is maybe Cal Foot's a little green for the playoffs. Or maybe they want to upgrade on that right D spot with Jan Ruda and Cal Foot. And they may look at something like that, but it would have to be a player-for-player swap, I would think.
Yeah. All right, John, break it down for me here, man. Tampa Bay Lightning, what do you think?
This is tough to say because they are in cap hell. They have no ability with any sort of money without moving significant money out. I agree they could kind of do what Pearlo was talking about, maybe move a guy like Killorn or something like that, and try and start working on this cap issue right now. But at the same time, I feel like Tampa's all in. Like, they're going to say the heck with it. looking forward, we are all in to win back-to-back cups, and then we'll deal with the cap issues in the offseason, and we'll have to, obviously move on from some guys. But they could be all in on winning the cup this year and just trying to go back-to-back, and they might want to keep everybody and just say we're keeping this team. Cooch will come back in the playoffs when cap doesn't matter anymore, and we'll get the best winger in hockey back, and then we're going all in on Stanley Cup #2. And then in the offseason, they'll have to obviously start moving guys out to be cap compliant. But I wouldn't be surprised. They're not going to be able to add, really, I don't think, and without doing like a player-for-player deal, because they obviously need money to be going out to bring money in. They do need a backup goaltender that can actually stop a puck. Curtis McElhaney isn't cutting it.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. Jeez, how could I forget?
But again, they would have to move somebody out to be able to bring in another goaltender. If they were to go after a Bernier or somebody like that, they have to move money out because they literally cannot take on any money right now. So it's going to be interesting. They could start trying to move some pieces that maybe aren't considered crucial. To try and start that process of opening up some cap space. But at the same time, I have a feeling they might just do nothing, take this team into the playoffs, and go all in for Cup #2, and then in the offseason start dealing with the cap problems that they're absolutely having. But if you win 2 Stanley Cups out of it, I'll take the blow up at the end for the 2 Stanley Cups for sure.
Because that's coming. Because they got $17 million with Kucherov on there as long-term, as over the cap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're over the cap by
and so they're going to purposefully hold him out until the playoffs?
Yes, that is what they're doing.
They can't do anything else.
If
they're holding him out until the playoffs, they can't do anything because they're already so far over the cap.
Yeah.
So they can't do anything. And if they do anything with Curtis McElhaney, it's going to have to be somebody that's got the same level contract, $1.3 million.
Absolutely.
So they can't do anything. That's why I don't think they can potentially move some people. Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, you know what I mean? Some of these guys that are not going to, that are UFAs next year, they can potentially move.
I just think they want those guys for the playoffs.
Right.
They're not going to go to the Cup again without those guys in the playoffs.
Exactly. And, that is Anders Nielsen that guy? Is he that?
No.
He's not the goalie that can come in and stop the puck?
No.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, the one thing that will change is Curtis McElhaney will be replaced. Yeah. They can find a way to do that. There's ways that they can move their
whatever they're going to have to do, it's got to be equal for equal. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to be able to take on any salary.
As long as there's somebody that wants to make a trade, there's a way to do it.
I agree, but Tampa Bay, cannot take on any salary without, you know what I mean? So, all right. Well, there you have it, folks. We went through the entire Central Division. That's the Discover Central Division. The Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, Chicago Blackhawks, Columbus Blue Jackets, Dallas Stars, Nashville Predators, and Detroit Red Wings. We got great insight from both the GOAT and from the Pearls of Wisdom. So, John, how can we get a hold of you? Where can we get all your great stuff? And how can we see you?
Yeah, main thing obviously is YouTube, Off the Wall Hockey. Got over 4.1K subscribers last night, so easy to find on YouTube, on Twitter, at Off the Wall Hawk. Just drop the EY from hockey. I have a Facebook page as well where I post all my new videos and stuff. That just search Off the Wall Hockey on Facebook and it will come up.
Awesome. The great Pearlo Wisdom. Pearlo, how can we get a hold of you? Where can we follow you and watch all your great stuff?
You can watch me from 3 to 5 on the NHL Pearls Wisdom Show. We do fine picks over there. We have fun just seeing who's going to win, picking who's going to win, what the score is going to be. You win fabulous prizes.
Exactly. Those Pearlo necklaces, man, for sure.
Pearlo necklaces, yeah. You can also find me on Twitter at Pearlo's NHL POW. You can find me on, of course, the SteelFlyers Network on www.steelflyers.com. You can go over there. All my work that I do is there. And you can find me sometimes on John's show, when he's doing nights, we like to do lives. I highly recommend you go check out that stuff.
Please check him out.
Yeah, and you can find me doing it with the same thing with Peyton on the radio, and then we've got the professor, who, by the way, I wanted to mention when you mentioned Florida. The professor was the one that was touting Florida in the offseason, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
That's why he's called the professor.
Yeah.
He was. So
He was on with that one.
That's why we call him the professor, for sure.
That's right. Nails it. But that's where you can find me, man.
Thank you guys for being on here. This is always a pleasure. We've gotten we're down to the last one, so we have 3 down, 1 to go.
Yep.
This was the breakdown of the NHL Central Division trade deadline preview show with Pearlo Wisdom and John from Off the Wall Hockey. I'm SteelFlyers. You can find me on Twitter at SteelFlyers52. You can check out all these guys' great stuff on the SteelFlyers All Sports Network at www.steelflyers.com. Thank you all very much for checking us out. Please hit the like and subscribe. Just remember, folks, stay safe, stay strong, and hang tough.